welcome to my video on the future of theatre technology. I did this talk at Plasa in 2017, which was just a month ago, and I promised that I would upload it for the benefit of people who didn't get to come to see it in real life. The whole point of this presentation is that we're looking at the 40th anniversary of Plasa. We're actually going forwards in time to 2057 to look at its 80th anniversary. So, hope you enjoy. Here we go. So, it's 2057, and I am talking to you from the future. It's exciting. The idea is that there are a number of significant things that have happened in the last 40 years, which I wanted to tell you about. Things that might have had a big impact in the theatre industry. So, the first of these is changes to the global economy. Now, it's 2057 and there are now 3 billion people living in China and India, and thanks to the wealth that's been generated in China and India, these people are all able to afford to go to see the theatre. They go to a lot of sporting events as well, of course, but the theatre and particularly the opera has become a big part of their lives. We also have a lot of new megacities, super cities being built, which are massive infrastructures that incorporate office space, retail, homes, healthcare, education, and sports and cultural venues. So we can see some of these being developed, which means more venues. There's also a lot of disused shopping centres being built. Shopping centres used to have shops in, but now thanks to internet shopping and 3D printing, we can now print what we want at home, so there's no need to go to a shop anymore. Instead, these areas are being repurposed to be made into arts and sports venues. So we now have a massive increase in the number of venues available. All those venues can now be populated with productions, and particularly the ones made out in the East, in China and India, they need Western skills to make them because they're still not quite there yet. So they want our productions, they want our people, and we're all going out there to do it. In addition to this, we also have universal translators now that can simultaneously translate live performance with the original actors and performers' voices and the song words could be transmitted using their actual voices, but translated into the original language or your first language. So this means that now tourists can come to London and listen to one of our shows without feeling like they're being ostracised because we're not playing it in their language. So what this whole picture is telling us is that there are more venues, there's more audiences, and there's greater demand on our services as producers of theatre to keep coming up with new shows for them to come and see. The second big change is changes in transport and infrastructure. So autonomous vehicles are now commonplace. We have autonomous logistics, trucking, container ships. It's now possible for container ships to go all around the world without needing human input. This means that freight movement has now gone down by 40% in cost and is now much faster. So we're able to tour our shows much cheaper and much quickly. We also have electric planes, which means we can get around the world more sustainably because sustainability is now a really big issue for us. In 2057, the climate is worse than ever. And the Hyperloop has allowed us to have transport from Glasgow to London in 45 minutes, New York to London in 3 hours, and China to London in 5 hours. So that means audiences are able to get all over the world very, very quickly. You can walk out of your office in Glasgow and be in London in time for curtain up from 6 o'clock in the evening because you can get there so quickly. So we now have a much larger commuter belt. What was previously just the M25, and that was our entire audience that could travel without needing a hotel, has now been increased to cover all of the UK and half of Northern Europe. The third pillar of change is new audience media. Augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, all the realities, they're all coming to us. It's now possible to watch a performance in your own home, in sort of generic spaces that are designed for the purpose, and you might see, put your glasses on like I'm wearing now, and you're sitting in your living room on your sofa, and there'll be a performer standing in front of you. They might be singing out of a window, might turn to have a look at you when they're talking. That might be come sit next to you on the sofa and actually start engaging with you. So a performance becomes much more immersive and doesn't have to happen in a specific location. It can happen anywhere in the world. Just the other day, I was walking through Trafalgar Square and my phone notified me that there was a performance in my area. So I picked up my phone, or I put on my glasses, and I watched a ballet unfolding over the lines of Trafalgar Square. That's because it's now possible to create immersive media anywhere and send it to people directly to their phones. Now, on top of that, we're also looking at ways we can improve the design process using visualization tools. It's now possible for a designer to get immersive inside their set on the stage using VR tools. We can have a collaborative design session with people from all over the world. So you can be in New York in the Met, you could have people sitting in Singapore in one of their opera houses and communicate with us here in London using the power of VR. And what we're seeing is an avatar of those people walking around on our stage, engaging with the set design. So the design process has become a lot more collaborative too. And then generative design. So picture a world where you can have a scan of, say, the Arc de Triomphe and a tree, and a computer will design for you the perfect set based on those parameters. We can scan in a picture of a lake with stars and moonlight, and that could be recreated digitally by a lighting desk on stage using the lights in the rig, because it knows where all the lights are, it knows what colours the lights can produce, it knows where to point them, so it creates a look for you. You can also make predictions about the success of a production. So if you enter all the information about a production in advance, it will tell you whether that production will be a success or not. That will help producers decide whether they want to commit funds to it, or maybe they need to change how they market the show or change the type of audience they're aiming at. We also have music created by artificial intelligence. So this means that we could have any production, opera, ballet, entirely created by music. And it's very interesting because now Olivia Awards have been collected by an AI. We have three out of the 10 songs in the charts in 2057. They are all AI generated. And we don't know who to give the awards to. It's just a computer. So AI in music is very exciting. It's changing the way we think about music. And then we have thought control. Now, all of this this information that we're using now, all this the ability for artificial intelligence to start thinking about our designs, to better predict shows, that information is generated through thought control. So now in a preview period in the West End, we'll take maybe 30 or 40 people wearing thought control devices in different locations around the auditorium, from different demographics and backgrounds with different interests, and we'll start to generate thought patterns to create a map of that entire show, so a director can see what it is that makes them happy, what makes them sad. Maybe there's something that makes all the men happy and all the women angry. That might be quite interesting. We want to get on top of that. But it basically means we can fine-tune the show during the previews to actually respond to the audience, what they like. We can also use thought control to control the scenery and the equipment on stage. You can start going on stage and just think blue and the lights will turn blue. And we have new construction technologies. Additive manufacturing has been around for a long time. It's now possible to have 3D printers build us the entire scenery. They can build all the substructure and let the scenic artist come in and just do the nice bit on top, the bit that requires craft or the art. We can have drones assemble the scenery, move it all around for us. So it can arrive on stage on a truck, the autonomous truck just wheels in and the drones come out, pick it all up and assemble it on stage. And then they move out of the way and they're waiting there until there's a scene change and they can come in and do the scene change for you. And these same lights can also be used to move our lights around. So whereas 40 years ago, a light, if it was off, it wasn't being used. Now we have less lights on stage, but they're used more because we move them to where they're needed. So if you need a wash light from 30 lights, you'll move some of your top light down to the sides to make sure you've got extra power there. And then you move them back up for the scenes when you want more wash lights. So moving lights on drones has meant that lighting has become more efficient. And all of this has been made possible by the new advanced materials that are available now. Graphene, for instance, which is lighter, stronger and cheaper than steel or wood or plastic. And robotic costumes. It's now possible to put on a piece of clothing that was designed for one size and it will expand or shrink to fit you. So that's quite exciting. And the visualization process has really changed how we think of design. We now think about creating an entire visualization of the entire show before we start actually creating anything. So before we cut the first cloth or screw the first piece of wood together, we create a complete visualization experience from the overture to the finale, with all the design disciplines captured in that CGI model. We can then view it on a screen in virtual reality, augmented reality, and this allows designers to really interrogate their own designs to make the design more robust. They start thinking about what's really important in the story, how to get the best out of the art, and also they collaborate better together because they're all in the studio together, working together as a design team, and not distracted by the many things that go on in the venue once you get into the tech period. So visualization is the sixth pillar that has really affected the design process. Oh, so we're going to come back now to 2017. Lots of stuff going on at the moment that probably we're not quite so proud of. Maybe we won't be quite so proud of it in 2057 either. I think at this point I want to take a pause and think about what the consequences of what I've just been talking about. I think the first thing I want to say is that this isn't what I think should happen, is what I think could happen. It's not my opinion that any of these technologies come about. I'm just reporting on research. So at that point, I'll tell you the second most important thing here is that nothing I've talked about today is science fiction. It may seem like it's something that may seem very far away, but every single thing exists already as technology. Or maybe it's just on a prototype on a lab bench, but in most cases it's something that exists already and it's been used commercially in other industries. So what I'm trying to get to with this is that this technology exists, and if history shows us anything, it's that if there's a way of doing something cheaper and more efficiently, the people with the money will make sure it gets in and it happens. So it's up to us as an industry to try to engage with this technology and adopt it, because the big elephant in the room here is job displacement. What will this technology do for people's jobs? And it's not a secret that artificial intelligence in particular will displace a lot of jobs in the future, mainly in logistics and retail, and this is published documentation, not my opinion. Up to 60% of jobs in those industries will be lost in the next 10 years. So we need to start thinking about that. How do we make sure the theatre industry is protected from new technology? And protected doesn't mean don't use it. It means we do have to use it. That's how we protect the jobs. We have to be using them in a way that is going to benefit us and make sure that the people remain the centre of the design process. And I think the other thing I should say is that if you think at any point that I'm proposing that the design is being controlled by computers, I'm not. The human being is still in control of the design process. They're still in control of the creative spark, the original idea, and the final output has to be decided by a human being. The point is that the process in between that, all of those steps in the design process are being automated more. Automation is the word of the decade, I'm afraid, and we need to start to understand how we fit into that. So with that in mind, I'm going to take you through those 6 stages again, but this time I'm going to present evidence of why I believe that these technologies are going to exist. The first one is a report by PwC, which just covers me on the global economy changing. We are looking at 3 billion people living in China and India. We also have a dramatic shift towards the E7 economies rather than the G7, China and India being the most wealthy countries in the world. So we can expect there to be a lot of 3 billion wealthy Indian and Chinese people who are all starting to love theatre and opera in particular. Evidence of that is in the number of theatres they're building. Wow. So a couple of examples there from the Middle East, Opera House Muscat, Amman and Dubai. But all the other images are from China, and one of those is a conference centre that doubles as a music venue, but all of the others are just straightforward theatres and opera houses, and none of them are small. We have no theatres above pubs here. These are all architectural triumphs. They're huge, they have high capacity, and they're technically the most advanced theatres in the world at the moment because they're all so new. And the most significant part about this slide actually is that there was 5 theatres built in 2012 in China. 5, in 1 year. That's more than we've built in the UK in 100 years, and that's from small to large. So China are really taking it very seriously, this idea that their new wealth is going to be spent in the arts. So that's lots of opportunity for us. They need us to produce some productions. They need us to go out there and show them how to do it. both Oman and Dubai are examples of that. So many people from London have been out there to set up and run those theatres. They can't do it without us. So for the time being, at least, in the next few years, there's opportunities for us out there. And megacities. I talked about megacities as being it's maybe something a bit science fiction. The idea there's like an enclave where we all live and work in one place. You never go out of it. Well, it's actually kind of what's happening. The bottom left, Stratford, you might recognise it from the Olympic Stadium. That is actually the best example of a megacity that's ever been completed. When it was conceived as an Olympic venue, the Olympics was almost secondary to the master plan that was going to become the city afterwards. It was designed to be converted back into a city. The Olympic Village became housing, the sports and arts venues, or sports venues became sports and arts venues. All the shopping was built with Westfield. And we didn't build a Westfield shopping centre just for the Olympics. It was built there as part of a global, a larger development plan. And that's very obvious now with Stratford set up the way it is. We have everything in one place. It's transport, healthcare, education, retail, homes, sports and arts venues. So an increase in arts venues is the main point there. Batty Power Station is also a megacity, although I don't think that one has an arts venue. And Europa City is the two images on the right. That's in Paris, and they've been developing that for 5 years already. So even though it looks science fiction, it's actually very, very real, and it's been built at the moment, just not finished, so we can't see what it's actually going to look like. But it gives us a pretty good idea. Now, what I love about this idea of megacities is that it puts theatre back into the communities and community back into theatre, because it becomes a place that you work and live and eat and sleep. Actually, the social centre of those places is going to be the sports and arts venues. And community theatre is really important. It's where we all started in the theatre industry. If I speak to 90% of technicians and artists I speak to, they started off in either amateur dramatics or schools, and that's the power and importance of local theatre. Particularly in opera, you tend to find people go to see their friends performing in amateur dramatics opera before they come and see something for real up in London. So it's a very important grassroots component of our industry, providing both skills and audiences in the future. So seeing community theatre come back is really important to me. But of course, these theatres aren't going to be small. They're not village halls. They're professional big venues that will be used by professional companies. So there's still an increase in the number of productions that are needed. Now, I talked about universal translators, and I will try to play this video, but actually it's already out of date.
Good afternoon, Melanie. How are you?
Aber nach neuem Melanie, wie geht es dir?
Mir geht es gut. Wie geht es dir?
Well, how is his name, friends?
Sorry, Melanie, say that again.
Melanie, sag das nochmal.
Mir geht es gut. Wie geht es
I am
dir?
well. How are you doing?
I'll stop that there. As you can see, it didn't work very well. This is a Microsoft conference back in 2013, so it's actually quite old now. But when I was researching for Plasa just 4 weeks ago, this was the best I could find. 3 days after Plasa, Google had its conference and announced its new headphones for its phone, the Pixel Buds, and they can do simultaneous translation. So if they were doing this video again, as the guy on the left was speaking, the woman on the right would hear an instantaneous translation, which is exactly what I described in my vision. So universal translators about, and as I sort of explained, the idea of this, now you can go anywhere in the world and watch any performance in any language and hear it in your own. So I could go to Germany and watch a piece of drama in German and hear a simultaneous translation. If they can get to the next point where you could have a song sung by someone, that's Indina Menzel singing Gravity in Wicked, and I could hear it with her voice but in different language, then that's a dream, because then you can listen to an original performer's vocal expression. And I think that's the next thing to come. We're moving quickly on this. So this whole picture that I've built up here with the changes in the global economy is that we've got more venues, we've got more productions, and we've got more people wanting to see them. So the industry is going to really grow very quickly. The transport revolution. So I described the Hyperloop. Let me explain this. So this is what a Hyperloop is. It's a jet engine with a dozen or so seats in it. They suck all the air out of a tube that goes under the ground. and this thing can accelerate to 200 miles an hour in 2 seconds, and it goes on to apparently up to 800 miles an hour is the latest predictions I've heard. This is a real one that's been built in America by Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a bit of a hero of mine. He sort of developed Tesla and SpaceX. He made all his money in PayPal, made billions, and now he's spending it on trying to further humankind. So it's like the Isambard Kingdom Brunel of 21st century, developing new transport systems. The image in the upper right is the Hyperloop 1 model for the UK. Now this has been provisionally proved, and we could expect some sort of real development on this in the next 5 to 10 years. So London to Edinburgh, 50 minutes. Birmingham to London in 14 minutes. Now HS2, I think the billions of pounds they spent on that, and the disruption it's caused to the environment and the homes, and actually they're only saving 20 minutes on the journey. And this is doing it in 14 minutes, and it will go under the ground, so it wouldn't actually affect anyone. So I think this is a much better model for the future of transport. But what's interesting about this is that if you look at the commuter belt for London's West End and all our theatres, basically looking at the M25, it's about 10 to 14 million people that have access to London without needing a hotel. With the Hyperloop, you could come out of your office at 6 o'clock in Edinburgh and be in London in time for curtain up. So that means that the entire of the UK and Northern Europe is now in the commuter belt for London. So that's nearly 200 million people that now have access to London's theatres in their after work period. The image at the bottom is a train concept that's been developed by the Chinese. They reckon that will reach 2,500 miles an hour, which is twice the speed of Concorde. So you could wake up in Beijing in the morning and be in London in time for matinee, and conceivably get it home in time for bedtime. So that's completely changed the way we think of transport. And it's completely increased the number of audiences that can get to us. We can tour quicker, we can bring our special artists around the world a lot quicker, but more importantly is our audiences will have increased. So if you think that we may be operating at 60-70% capacity in London, all of our seating, maybe more, well, we're going to be selling out, and we're going to need more venues pretty quick, and we're going to need more people to fill them. So it's a good industry to be in at the moment, because we're going to need more people to run it. This is an example of how containerism is going to change with autonomous vehicles. It's just generally a quite good example of autonomous vehicles, but it's a really dodgy video. It's made by Rolls-Royce. I'll play it.
We live in an ever-changing world where unmanned and remote-controlled vessels are becoming reality. Let us share a view of this world with you. The control room is the nerve center of remote operations in the Rolls-Royce OX concept, where the global wall shows a real-time overview of worldwide shipping traffic. A full situation overview is presented to operators who are monitoring vessels via remote link from their onshore workstations.
Dynamic Positioning Reports DGPS-1. Lost connection for vessel RR9835. Suggested course of action. Diagnostics. Commands?
Proceed.
GPS, geopositioning and celestial navigation status. Nominal. INS status. Transmission stopped. Suggested failure mode, physical. Commands?
Stand by. I'll have a closer look.
Drones 01 through 08 ready for inspection flight. Commands?
Launch drones 1 and 2. Flight plan. Standard inspection routine. Camera control, manual with eye track.
Okay, so I'm stopping it there because that's enough of that dodgy video. But you can see the idea. The idea is that there's a command center, just 2 or 3 people in it, and they operate all of the world's shipping containers. So you just have a crew of 3 for all the ships in the world. And drones are used to offer maintenance, repair. If you need something more advanced, the maintenance crew can go out and visit. from a remote maintenance area. So the entire thing has been run out of one location, making it more efficient and cheaper. Now we have lots of new audience medias available to us. These are just some examples of how I see this being used in the visualization process. So just to talk you through it, we start at the bottom left. We have Magic Leap's famous whale jumping out of the floor. Now this is the potential for new audience experiences on stage. You can have live performances where literally anything is possible because you create it digitally and augment it in front of them. I think this is a long way off myself. I think what's more likely is we'll have small interactive site-specific experiences, maybe 10 to 20 people wearing devices with some sort of live entertainment going on at the same time. The other images all describe something similar, which is a visualization process. We could have the director walk around the sets, they could pick up lights, they could have a look at the scenery from different seats, and that's all using virtual reality, which is the image in the top middle. We can have holographic experiences, and we're looking at the top left there, which is the ROH holographic prototype. The idea of this is that we're using a lighting desk to move the scenery. Eventually you'll be able to operate the lighting and the flies and all the automation via normal automation technology. But you can go into an empty space, so a rehearsal room or even an arena, and actually visualize all of the scenery moving around you in full scale as a full rehearsal. So you think about something maybe the size of the Olympics, where you have very large rehearsals and you're doing them all without scenery because it takes so long to build. You could actually have full-scale technical rehearsals without needing any bit of scenery available at all, or even your lighting finish. You just augment it. Doesn't mean everybody involved in that production has to wear some sort of device, but in the future that could happen. At the bottom middle is my own app, which is it's a bow probe app. So you basically have cubes and spheres and stairs and flats and all sorts of standard objects, and you can just place them around the stage and start to create some looks that you can use. And interestingly, the Cirque du Soleil have actually created something very similar, which is what we're looking at in the bottom right. They're working towards a very similar idea, where you can have a creative meeting that can happen across the world by having avatars that network in, and start creating mock-ups of your show. The top right video is a PR video produced by a company called Meta, who are launching a equivalent of the Microsoft HoloLens. It's a mixed reality device which shows you a hologram. The reason I show this is because this is actually going to affect everybody in the whole world. One day we won't have TVs or computer monitors anymore. What we'll have is augmented screens. It'll just be created in front of you. How many do you want? Do you want 2 screens, 3 screens? Do you want a Twitter feed down here? And you can have a YouTube video up in the sky above you. You can actually put something in the window. If you don't want to have a cloudy window, have a sunny view. Just cover it up with an augmented display. This technology is really going to change our lives, and they predict it's going to be worth more than the smartphone industry in about 4 or 5 years' time. So not only is this technology here now, it's quickly growing out of reach for most consumers. We have to sort of get on top of it quickly as an industry if we want to be able to use it before our audiences are already ahead of us and they have technology and start expecting it to be used. So the Royal Opera House has already moved quite far with new audience media. We're looking specifically at 360 video at the moment, although we're hoping to get into VR very soon. The idea of this is that you can experience a life and a day of a member of the chorus at the Royal Opera House and watch it in a 360 video that you can spin around and move. And you play it on YouTube, so it's something that's very easy to be accessed by anyone. But you can also play it in a VR device. You don't just have to have a mobile that you move with your hands. It's also something you can experience immersively. Now, generative design is very difficult to explain. This is artificial intelligence, and the best way to explain it is a couple of case studies. So here's one. This is a drone, and what they've done with this drone is they've entered in the details of the maximum parameters for the drone. They've said this is the size of the propellers, this is the battery pack and the control gear, and this is the maximum size you want it to be. This is the force that the propellers can lift, and then it lets the computer calculate the optimum layout of the material to make it light, rigid, strong, and put in the strength where it's needed. So a computer's designed all of that, and it's something that's far more complicated than a human being could ever design. And actually, it's far more complicated than a human being could ever build as well. But that's just one example. Another really good example. This is a office layout at Autodesk's home, and they are trying to work out the optimum office layout based on parameters they've collected from their staff. So the staff do a significant survey. They process their likes, their dislikes, what makes them work harder, less. Do they like so much daylight? Do they like sitting next to somebody? Do they like to not sit next to someone? Who should they be sitting next to? How close should they be to the toilets and the coffee machine and the break areas and the meeting areas? And all of this information is fed in with loads of other parameters that I have no idea how they collected it all. But the AI is able to process all that information and just keep constantly working out the optimum office layout based on all that information. So here it's calculating the path of the sunlight, and then it work out what the maximum daylight is, and then it can place people based on their preference for sunlight, daylight. And eventually what you get is about 100,000 or so different designs that the AI has come up with, and you get to choose what's your preference, what's the most important thing. Do you want to dial in worker productivity or worker creativity, or maybe worker happiness? You sort of prioritize what you think is more important to you as a business, and it will then tell you what the optimum design is based on those parameters. And what you end up with is 5 or 6 different layouts you can choose from, and maybe you can mix and match bits of both of them, and it can keep reanalyzing it. And once it's been applied and you've actually done it and you can redo the surveys, you start to find out more information, more parameters. So maybe staff are starting to find out they like the angle of their screens to be a bit more to the side of the daylight or something, and then that can then be fed in to create another version that was even more optimized, and that can be used to create a new layout, and they can all move again and test it. So basically generative design is getting you closer to having a perfect product, but you're still having a human controlling those dials, moving those controls around. So where this fits into scenery, so I gave the example of a designer coming in with a picture of the Arc de Triomphe from the tree. That's entirely possible. You scan it in and the computer can recreate that physically. It can start to work out what the optimum structural layout is for your scenery, making sure that all the beams and the cross bracing is all in at the most optimum use of material, so it's lighter, stronger, and cheaper. And we can also take that into our lighting rig as well, because lights are basically made up of parameters. We can enter a picture and let the lighting desk calculate how to move those parameters around to give an optimum scene, to give a nice wash or to put colour in, and all that can be controlled via a computer. Now a designer still has design control, they're still the creative spark, and they have to look at the final product and decide if that's what they want. And in that respect it's no different from calling out to a board op or a technician to say, can you give me a blue wash? But rather than having to move each light individually, pan and tilt, change the colour, go on to the next one, you let the computer do that calculation. And if you have any desires or things you want to control, like maybe you want to shutter off the blacks, or you want to bring lights, so they use the border as a shutter, you can enter those parameters and it will use them to control it. So you're not doing anything you wouldn't do normally. You do it with just 3 or 4 commands and then let the computer do the rest. So the whole process becomes quicker. Now I can't say I'm an advocate for it, because personally I find my design process relies heavily on me going through those stages myself manually. But in the future, when we're pushed because a producer knows that they can ask for these things, it will probably be more expected of us to deliver this with this technology, because we have time pressures that we wouldn't have today. Because when they know that we can use this technology to speed up the process, they will cut our time. So, and actually it's also happening the other way around. Our time's been cut in preparation for new technology. We're seeing shows with less and less time than we've ever had before, and we're almost pushing ourselves to need this software and this technology in order to deliver in the constraints that we've been given. Another type of generative design is music created by artificial intelligence. This is very, very here today. There's a website called ampermusic.com. It's in beta at the moment. I've had a play of it. It's very, very fun to do. Apart from a little daylins for clarinet when I was at school, I've got no real musical talent. I can read music, but I can't write it. I can't even think how I compose music, but I know what I want in my head. So actually, if you put some dials in, so you say I want a bit of this, I want it to have maybe try this key out, maybe change key at this point, let's have a sting of some drum kit there. You can enter all that in yourself, so you don't have to think about how to play music. You just say, what do I want as a listener? What do I know about music? And what do I like? And I'll create that music here. If you want to add a bass guitar in, do it, see what it sounds like. It will automatically create for you a soundtrack for that bass guitar that fits the piece of music that you've been creating. And as it layers up, it keeps modifying the music to make it better and better, or worse and worse, depending on how clever you are with it. So this is an example that I've got here. It's just Taryn Southern singing a song. She sung it, and it's her face and her vocals that she created, but everything else about it was created by an AI. So all the music was composed by the AI, and actually the video was edited by an AI as well.
I wish I could see beyond what I can see. I wish I could touch beyond what I can touch. I wish I could feel beyond what isn't real. I wish I could imagine, yeah. There's more to who we are. There's more to what we could be. As I feel the weight of being, I'm learning how to break free. I'm breaking free. I'm breaking down, breaking free.
I saw that there. It's actually quite a catchy piece of music. You get used to it, but very clever to think that's been created entirely by AI. So this technology is all here. One thing that no one's done yet is try to create a production with an AI, so that the music is completely composed by artificial intelligence. And I should stress that, again, it's not actually the computer that's doing the creating, it's just producing it. It's doing all the bit that, as a non-musician, I can't do, but it's actually in my ability now to compose my own musical, which I could never do before. So that's the power of artificial intelligence. Right, and now we have thought control. Now, thought control is entirely possible. I touched on this, the idea that you could get information back from an audience, or you can take control of your lighting rig or your scenery. And I've got a feeling that this video might be staged a little bit, but they feel confident enough to market it based on this, so there must be some measure of truth in it. This is the bit I'm quite interested in. Can we control our lighting with thought control? I'm yet to get my hands on one of these devices and try it out, but as soon as I do and I've tested it, I'll post something, because I think that would be quite interesting. In terms of getting feedback from audiences, we've done this at the Royal Opera House. You might recognise these two. They were all wired up to various monitors, and we got information from them to see how they actually enjoyed the performance. And that was quite interesting. We could actually use that to build a map of the show. But it was two very specific people sitting in a specific box with their own specific interests in opera and ballet. What would be more interesting is to have people wired up all over the auditorium with different backgrounds, different likes. Maybe a young male is interested in gaming. What do they like? Is there parts of the show they're enjoying? And maybe we can maximise on that, because that will reach new audiences. So getting feedback live from an audience is quite interesting. But I'm quite interested in this from a design point of view. If you can get that information during a preview period, you could actually talk to your director and say, well, maybe we should try to make this a little bit more exciting for points. There's not enough light and shade. Maybe it's just hilarious the whole time, and there's no chance for the audience to get a break. Or maybe, as I mentioned, a male audience finds something more funny than a female audience. Does that maybe point in the direction of sexism? So we can use this technology to enlighten us and maybe make our productions a bit more PC and better for everyone. And construction technologies. I talked about 3D printing. Now, I bought a 3D printer a couple of years ago, and I thought when I bought it I was going to be making brilliant lampshades, really interesting shapes, and you can sell them on eBay, and I'll be making a fortune doing that. All I've done so far is make train tracks for my toddler, and that's because actually the quality of the product isn't that great. It's brilliant for prototyping and maybe like creating stencils that you can use to make something more solid. But for doing anything really substantial, I wouldn't trust it. But then I saw this. Now this is Ram Labs in Rotterdam, and this is a company that services and maintains shipping containers. And when a ship breaks, it will go into their dry docks, and it might stay there for months. And it costs both of them millions of pounds while they wait for new parts to be built. But with this system, they have on site a 3D printer, which is basically a welding torch on a 3D printing arm, and it can build propeller blades. And what I realised about this, the little epiphany came to me when I thought, well, if you can build a propeller shaft which can deal with the torques and the strains of moving a shipping container across the sea at 20 knots, it can definitely hold the weight of our performers on stage. So why aren't we building our scenery with this? It would be very efficient. Then let's have a look at this, which is a house which was built in a day, cost less than £10,000 to make, and it's of the scale of one of our pieces of scenery. Now this was actually built in concrete, but the idea is that a little nose is moving around laying concrete just like a 3D printer would, using exactly the same processes as our 3D printer at home. Now if we were using a new material such as graphene, which I alluded to, which is actually ready today and is now stronger, more lighter and cheaper than steel or plastic or wood, you can actually use that to build your scenery and then disassemble it and transport it. In terms of transportation, we have drones. The drones are, in this image, they're building a bridge with ropes. They're being controlled by an artificial intelligence, and they're going to create something that a man can walk across in the end. And what this is telling me is that drones are actually ready now for being involved in the construction process. So we could have them assembling our scenery for us. The truck arrives and they just unpack it and they can move it all together. We can also have moving lights attached to them because they're strong enough to lift up a moving light. Probably they'll be built inside them. Now we've seen drone fireworks. The Super Bowl halftime show had them last year, and we can expect drones to be quite heavily involved in moving lights around. The reason for this is that we can have less lights doing more work because we're moving where we want, particularly in arena situations where you have thousands of lights and maybe the stage has been moved to the A stage away from the B stage, and you just physically move the lights to where you need them to be rather than turn them off and waiting for the action to come back to those parts of the stage again. In terms of lifting and carrying, this drone is moving. It's a fleet of drones moving blocks around in the space, again controlled by an AI. And this just demonstrates to me that we're ready to start assembling scenery with drones. And there he goes. We've got to drop down. So it's very exciting what drones can do. Now, would that replace our crew? Would that undermine sort of the human involvement? I don't think it would. I think it will support it. Our productions are getting bigger and our crews aren't getting bigger to support it. So I see drones and 3D printing aiding our crew and construction teams rather than replacing them. I don't think this is a case of artificial intelligence and machinery and automation replacing jobs. It's more of a case of helping us fulfill the capacity, because we're going to be needed to make so many productions in the future. A company that employs 20 craft people, it's craft skills that are very hard to find. It's very difficult to find skills that that quality of scenic art with experience that we need. Actually, we need to make each of those 20 people more efficient. So using technology, we can make those 20 people work to an even higher level without putting extra strain on them. So this hopefully will help craft skills rather than replace them. And that's the way I'm looking at it. And I know I'm trying to be very positive about it. Some people wouldn't, but that's what I'm hoping the message I'm trying to present is. And robotic costumes. I wonder how many people watching this video thought I'd maybe gone a little bit crazy with the idea of costumes that shrink and expand, but they're absolutely here. Now, to be fair, this is probably the furthest away from real life I've come so far. It's actually just a demonstration in a test lab at the moment. But the idea is that there's a mesh of metal with lots of magnets in it. The magnets act as pixels, and you can then control those pixels to maneuver that shape into anything you want. So you could actually have one costume that can fit any of your actors. So if you have an understudy or have a cast change, the same costume could be used. You just type in the new measurements and it all changes to fit them. You could also extend that to the idea that you can actually have a live costume change on stage. You could have a dress convert to a pair of trousers live on stage, and that's quite an interesting theatrical technique. You actually take that a step further. You think, well, if you can morph costumes into any shapes, then why do you need to go to a shop anymore and buy different clothes? Why not just have one piece of clothing and in the morning just say, I want to wear this today, and you type in the parameters and the whole costume just changes to whatever you want. So I'm wearing a t-shirt at the moment. Maybe on the way home I want a hoodie, so it just converts itself into a hoodie with a hood, so I can protect myself from the rain. So I don't need to buy any more clothes anymore. I just buy one thing and keep changing it. And the last pillar I want to talk about is visualization. Now I'm going to play this video while I'm talking. This is produced by a company called The Third Floor, who are sort of the industry leaders in the film industry in visualization. Now, what they are doing here, if you spoke to a director maybe 10 years ago in the film industry and said, could we use pre-visualization on your film, such as you're seeing at the moment, the answer would have been, no thank you, we'll just do it all on set. Now, The Third Floor used to coined a new term. They had a term called fix it in post. You may have heard it, fix it in post-production. When something goes wrong on set, like a mic boom's left in shot, you just edit it out in post-production. The Third Floor created a new term called fix it in pre-production. The idea being that if you properly plan your production, if everything is planned to this sort of degree, then you won't have errors on set. You'll get it right first time or near enough. And it doesn't, exclude chance for change and tweaks and being creative on the set, but it does mean that you can get a lot closer to it. Now, my vision for the theatre industry is to have this sort of visualization process at the heart of what we do. So we want to be able to create a complete CGI model of the entire production from overture to finale, with every design discipline integrated into it. So that's lighting, scenery, the dancing can be motion captured. You could have all of your cast blocked out. You could have all your scene changes planned of your crew being involved in that process. So what you end up with is a complete CGI model of your entire show. Now, the reason this is a good thing is because when you get onto stage, a design team can be quite distracted by all the other things that are going on, and also by then it's too late to make big changes. If something needs to change in the scenery, it's too late, it's built. You tend to find yourself working with what you've got, or if you're a very, 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 very expensive company, you might just start cutting set and changing it and spending enormous amounts of money on last-minute builds. But we can avoid all that by using a more thorough, robust visualization process. And I like the word iteration, because what this does, because it's free to change something, in a CGI world, it doesn't cost anything to make design changes. You do all of that in the design process in the studio, and all those design changes ultimately lead to a more iterative design that's more joined up between your design team. So when we eventually get on stage, again, we can make as many changes as you want afterwards, but you'll be in a much better place than you would be if you didn't have a visualization process. Now, this is going to be my contribution to the industry. I'm hoping, so The Third Floor took 8 years to bring it to the film industry. I'm hoping to do it in 5. And that's because I'm doing a PhD, and the PhD takes 5 years. And it started last month. So the clock's now ticking. I've got 5 years to bring full visualization to the theatre industry. And I hope you'll see the results of that in a few years' time. So that sort of brings me to the end of this video. I hope that I brought a positive image to the future. It will be very easy to do the same presentation and talk about doom and gloom and how it's going to destroy us. And there's definitely a lot of research for that out there. I don't believe it any more than I believe some of the positive outlooks. To be honest, a lot of it's still speculative, but there's a lot of very solid things in there that you can be sure of. There's a lot of technology which is definitely available, it's ready, and we can use it. Other industries are using it. I think I just want to reiterate a couple of the points I made in the middle, which is that I don't believe that this should happen. I just think it could. And the important thing is that we start discussing it as an industry. This technology is going to happen in some respects. We need to start thinking about how we could use it, so we're not going to be displaced by it. Now, job displacement is a really tricky thing to talk about, and I've seen lots of figures and research about how 60% of jobs in logistics will be gone in the next 10 years. Taxi drivers, truck drivers, it's all seriously at risk of being moved on. Now, fortunately, the theatre industry isn't going to be affected quite so badly, because creativity is still the domain of the human being, fortunately, and I can't see that ever changing. But we do have to start preparing ourselves for change. The strapline I use in the middle, which I'll repeat because I think it's really pertinent, is that if there is a way of doing something cheaper and quicker, then the producers, the people with the money, will expect it, they will do it. And history has shown us that time and time again. There's no technological advance that's happened in history that hasn't displaced jobs, which is why it's even more important that, as we're about to go through what could very likely be the next big revolution in history, we need to be engaging with the discussion, making sure that we are thinking about how it can support us, how we can work with it, so that we don't displace jobs, that we keep our industry strong, and that we grow with it. And that's really the message of this presentation. It's not to scare people. I hope that isn't what I've been doing. It's about trying to encourage industry collaboration. So I'm reaching out to all of you, our industry bodies, Plasa, the ALD, the SDLD, whoever represents you, because we don't have an organisation that represents the entire design process in theatre, but we need to engage all of these different disciplines together and start talking about how will our industry work with technology change. Personally, I'm actually quite excited. I'm the sort of person that looks at new technology and thinks about how I can adopt it to make my life better, how I can protect my job, how I can preserve my career so I can provide for my family. That's the most important thing for me, and that's the reason why I look at all this technology and why I'm doing all this research. It's not because I'm a geek, well I am. It's not because I want to scare people with exciting or scary new technology. It's simply that I want to understand it so I can learn it, so I can use it. If you believe the same, then go ahead and have a look. It's all out there. I'd encourage you all to go on YouTube one day when you go out and just type in technology for the next 20 years or the future technology. It's good. You spend a good few days just looking through some of the fantastic things that people are developing. And just remember, all this stuff's out there. It's all ready to go. Other industries are using it already. A lot of it's already available for consumers. So we can start testing it now. We can start using it. So hopefully that's a positive way to end. And thank you very much for listening to this video. Please feel free to leave some comments or email me or contact me from my website. And I'll be later on. I'll be posting up all of the sources that came from all of my my research. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.